Most people don't feel wealthy, but what if your day-to-day habits have you wealthier than what you might think? A recent article in Kiplinger said there's 5 signs that you just might be wealthier than you think. Today, we're going to go over those and analyze them and see if you're doing these 5 signals that say you just might be wealthier than you might think. Let me grab Walt and we'll dive right in.
Hey, thanks for joining us on Power Your Retirement. I'm Walter Stroholt, as always, alongside Steve Smit, and we've got a great show today. Steve is, of course, a certified financial planner and helps specifically employees of publicly traded utilities plan for their financial futures, whether that be retirement, building wealth, and understanding the uniqueness and the opportunities that are in your kinds of plans and opportunities through your savings at work. And we're going to dive into a little bit of that today, as we also zoom out to look at this interesting conversation of 5 signs you're richer than you think. And I think this will be a fun one to dive into. And like you said, Steve, this comes to us from a Kiplinger article. So we're just going to break down each one. And I'm interested in your take on these. Do you see this reflected in your client base and the people that you work with on a daily basis? So should be fun. You ready to roll?
I am ready to roll. Let's do this, Walt.
Okay, excellent. First one on the list is that you're prepared with an emergency fund. Most Americans don't have 3 to 6 months of expenses saved. So having this in place puts you well ahead of the curve. Why is this such a first real sign of stability for somebody?
The emergency fund it's very important to have because it really gives you a cushion in between you and Murphy, if you will, because life happens. Or as grandma says, save a little money for a rainy day because it's going to rain. However you want to state it, those are the facts of life. And if you don't have a little bit of cushion, you're going to go into debt. If your emergency fund is called Visa or American Express, one of those types of things, definitely can lead to really bad practices of accumulating debt. And sometimes they can be in the worst form of 20 and 30%. I've heard other statistics outside of this Kiplinger article that a lot of Americans are like 2 paychecks away from bankruptcy. That's horrible. But you asked a sample of what our typical clientele is. They come in with at least a month or two, and we coach them up into that 3 to 6, depending on their situation. 2 incomes is something that makes you a little stronger for any kind of disability or any kind of layoff or anything like that. But they really have credit to the companies and the people because they've got really good short-term and long-term disability transitions. So who you work for really matters in how much you actually need. But I would say most of the clients, when they come in, actually have a month to 2 months of cash sitting around. So I'm very proud of them. Yeah,
believe it or not, if you've got that emergency fund in place, Kiplinger says this is one of those 5 signs that you're richer than you think. You're ahead of the curve in that regard. And I know that can be really helpful. It goes hand in hand with our next one here. The next point that Kiplinger pointed out was that you live below your means. If you do that, that's one of the signs that you're richer than you think. A way to build up that emergency fund is to live below your means. It gives you that faculty, that ability, that good habit to build it in the first place. So look at your income. When it goes up, do your expenses also follow? Or are you able to keep your lifestyle relatively the same, even though you're maybe making more? This is what makes the big difference in people being able to put more away for retirement, more savings and investing opportunities. If they can do this, I got to think this is something you're trying to coach your clients on, especially your newer clients, as much as possible.
While the emergency fund was a big kudos to have a little bit of money around for a rainy day, this is one that's very difficult for my clientele. Not everyone and not every position, but many of the linemen and some of those jobs that are offered overtime. And sometimes, if they're in California, you can get double time. And I mean, it just ratchets from there. And when they're getting that for a long period of time, they might get new trucks or new vehicles or a new house or new boat or something that makes perfect sense at that 60, 70 hour a week, maybe 80 sometimes But if they're in that mode for a while, you kind of assimilate to that check. But when the company pulls in their wings and you're getting 40 to 45, that can catch people. So I'm constantly working with my clientele to make sure that we don't have that creep going on, because you can fool yourself, because your checks month in and month out, it can be bigger, and then all of a sudden they're smaller for those hourly folks.
Yeah, it's kind of like, we don't want you to ever not advance your lifestyle or move up to the next level, but can you delay it? Can you, that initial bump, right? That first time you ever get those bigger paychecks, can you withhold that need to jump up your lifestyle? Then when you get the next bump in your life, or that next big paycheck, or whatever the case may be, then you can jump up to the one that you would have been at prior. Like, if you can even just delay it one level of advancement,
right,
you're building in more and more wiggle room, more ability to live within your means. And so, I mean, obviously even better if you can kind of just stay happy and content where you are. But even that would be just a realistic thing that you could do, I would imagine, just to curb that growth one level. It's easier said than done.
It's something we all aspire to. Walt, you're spot on. And for success, you do what you're talking about. But we always have that primal, oh, is that the new Jeep? Oh, that's the V8 392. All these things, that's my little weakness there. I love Jeeps.
Yeah.
Of them. But
mine's a little dirty. Instead of cleaning it, I could just get a whole new one.
Right? And they have all these neat add-ons you can put on Jeeps and things. So I totally get it. Maybe it's boats for some other people. Maybe it's travel. Everybody's got their thing, but we got to make sure that we keep it in check. And if we want to do those things, that we make sure that we save towards it and we don't overextend, because then we start making bad choices.
Yeah, great point. Well, whether we're staying within our means or not, we need to do the next thing on the list. And Kiplinger pointed this out as a sign that you're richer than you think as well. And that's that you invest strategically, whether it's through that 401k or an IRA or a brokerage account, maybe even a Roth IRA or something like that. Are you making regular contributions? Are you strategic about how and where you're saving? Are you thinking about the market in terms of the long term rather than kind of in a short term focus? Those are all small little signs that you're kind of taking that next step, that next level of planning, and that you are probably richer than you think if you're doing even what sounds like kind of basic material here.
Yes, the great part about most of the people that I work with is they work for large companies, which they have 401k, which they automate through payroll. And that's just encouraging to make sure we're taking the right percentages to have that off. Many, if not almost all, not quite, have a cash balance pension as well of the big companies that I work with. And that's automatically funded by the company through how old you are and how much you make, and also how many years of service. There's a whole service credit that we can talk about at a different date, but that happens automatically. But what's happening more and more is the actual level, the high end of the 401k, for those that are in states that pay higher, because it's the same for the lowest paying state to the highest paying state, the actual max is the same. We're finding more creative ways for them to save even more if they're starting to hit up into that, 150, 200,000 and above. And it could be, especially if the spouse doesn't have a plan, or you've got one going on there. So we look into Roths, even though the 401k can be Roth in most of them. But you look at, backdoor Roth IRA. That's probably another thing we should do another episode. That'd be a great one. But making sure we're saving enough, because sometimes even maxing out that 401k isn't going to get you the same lifestyle you're enjoying now in retirement, depending on when you started. But those are things that we need to do. And if somebody is investing strategically, not just in the 401k, but really looking on multiple platforms to get to that retirement, is the person that's going to win.
Great points on that one. And again, we were really just hitting some of the like basics that you can do. And then you took it to the next level, Steve, of course, when we talk about strategically thinking about investing. Yeah, we were just scratching the surface with some of those basics, but even the basics tell us that you might be richer than you think. So just imagine if you're then putting even further thought into how you're investing and saving. Let's look a little bit differently now. And you are a fourth point is that you have multiple income streams. This is where we get into diversification conversations. Can you go beyond just your investments to create income streams? Now, there we're kind of talking about it as like maybe you've got a side hustle or some sort of passive income, maybe a rental property or a vacation rental, things like that. And that's great, Steve. Not everyone that you work with is going to have those side things, but it kind of opens up the door to talking about how we're going to increase the amount of income streams we have coming, at least once we get to that retirement date.
Absolutely. There's a couple different things. Probably the most common multiple income streams is having two incomes. Both spouses, working. There's diversification in that. That's probably the lowest hanging fruit we could do in this area. Not that everybody needs to do that. There's just some strength in that for obvious reasons. Also, a side hustle is great, but one thing, if you're hearing this, make sure that you have some entrepreneurial desire, if you will. Many times I'm thinking of Jack. He bought a home and he works a lot and travels a little bit for work. And it became very difficult to keep up on maintenance and getting new people in there and rent, and then started hiring property managers and all of this kind of thing. And then they, ended up a little bit underwater. And so you have to be wanting to have that entrepreneurial bone. It's not just extra money. If you're taking on a side hustle, that's going to be a whole nother thing. But also even rental property or vacation rental, you got to make sure that you're willing to, if you're working as an employee today, willing to take on the responsibilities of that business owner. But as Kiplinger says, if you can have multiple income streams, it adds to strength.
That's what we want. Absolutely. Last but not least, Steve, the fifth and final point from this article was about you focus on the long term. And this is not the first time this has come up on today's episode, but there's a reason for that. It's really important. How does your mindset and financial behavior reflect someone with a plan? Are you resisting panic during times of turbulence? Do you have a commitment to your big picture strategy? This is probably where some of the most coaching comes into play, Steve, when you're talking to clients, right? Keeping them calm through the turbulent times and telling them when to be aggressive or not during other times, and helping them navigate the right waters.
Absolutely. Focusing on the long term is the best. Fidelity did a study. And we're not citing this, but it makes sense in what Kiplinger found here, is that people that do the best long term are the ones that check their accounts the least. Now, I don't think you should just put money in something and not look at it for 20 years. That's why you engage with a financial person that's going to do that. Also, the one that typically earns the least is the one that's checking it on the hour, every hour, for sure, every day, because they're going to engage in every panic that the market brings their way. So we want to coach people that, hey, we want to do check-ins, so we don't want to be what Fidelity was saying. Never look at it. That's not a good idea. Also, checking in on the hour every hour is not a good idea either for the end client. And we will take on the responsibility and the stress of that up and down and around, and explain periodically to you what's going on as necessary.
Yeah. One of the big takeaways I had from this whole thing was just that you don't have to necessarily feel rich to be on the right track. If you're checking off some of these boxes that we've talked about today, even if not all five, you're very likely quietly building wealth in a way that's going to last, because these all have one similar foundation: good habits, good mindset, good approach. So before you kind of compare yourself to somebody else and you're looking at their highlight reel and you're wondering why yours maybe doesn't look the exact same way, take stock of your own financial habits, see where you stand, and I bet you're going to be in way better shape than you think. And that's kind of the message we want to get across today. You can find out where you stand right now by meeting with Steve, talking to him a little bit about your financial situation, where are the opportunities to improve your financial life, whether that be retirement and that's your current focus, or you're just trying to make the right decisions as you're working your way through your career. It's really important to have these conversations. And Steve, I was hoping for just a moment before we wrap up, if you can just tell us a little bit about the particulars of how you are different from other financial advisors out there, specifically with how you work with publicly traded utility employees and the difference makers there.
Absolutely. One of the staples or tenets of what we believe is what you focus on expands. And what we focus on is making sure that those employees are maximizing their benefits where they work, to make sure that we're using the cash balance pension to its greatest effect, the 401k, Social Security, and whatever the spouse that's not working most of the time that's the case, not working at that particular company. And we help the spouse do the same thing and bring that family plan together. Because if we can strategically check some of these 5 things off, a lot of times, the results, if we stick to it and we focus on it long term, turn into wonderful retirements.
Excellent. Well, if you'd like to take advantage of the opportunity to meet with Steve and talk to him a little bit about your financial plan, here's the way to interact and the best way to get started. It's to go to powerupyour401k.com. Powerupyour401k.com. We've got lots of great resources there on the website, the ability to book a time to get on Steve's calendar or order the toolkit so that you can read Steve's book. You can check out lots of other great resources of information as well. It's all going to be that great foundational first step to take to improve your financial life. So just go check that out. It's linked in the description of today's show. Powerupyour401k.com is the address. Everything you need, you can find there. Steve, thanks for walking us through today's program. We'll look forward to checking with you soon.
All right. Thanks, Walt. Appreciate everybody listening.
This podcast is provided by Powerhouse Financial Advisors, an independent firm with advisory services offered through Parson X Advisory Services, Inc., PAS, a federally registered investment advisor. The information provided is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered as personalized investment advice. PAS does not guarantee the accuracy, completeness, or suitability of this information for your specific circumstances. Investment decisions should be based on an individual's goals, time horizon, and risk tolerance. Past performance is not indicative of future results, and all investments carry a degree of risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any case studies, testimonials, or endorsements shared in this podcast are illustrative of individual experiences and may not be representative of the experience of all clients. They do not guarantee future performance or success. You should not infer any level of assurance regarding future financial outcomes. Listeners should consult with a qualified financial, tax, or legal professional before making any investment decisions. Parson X Advisory Services, Inc. does not provide tax or legal advice. Be sure to consult with your tax and legal professionals regarding your specific circumstances. For a copy of our Form ADV Part 2A, which provides additional information about PAS, including our advisory fees and services, please visit powerhousefinancialadvisors.com.